The model of success in America is premised upon ordinary citizens, ordinary people, being able to do extraordinary things, reaching potential beyond their wildest dreams, that there are no limits in a system of economic freedom, that there's no government, there's no power to get in the way to stop one from working hard, from striving for the best, and with a little luck, exceeding anybody's expectation. That is what this dream of the country is about. And again, in my own case, I tell the story of my grandmother, who after her family got to this country, she eloped with my grandfather, and they made their way down to Richmond, Virginia, my hometown. And it was there that they started a family. They didn't have any formal education, but they went about, they had 2 kids, and they opened a business. They became entrepreneurs. And it was a grocery store. And shortly after my father was born, my grandfather died. So there my grandmother was, in her early 30s, as a widow, a single mom, who happened to be Jewish in the segregated South. Well, what did she do? She said, I'm here, and I've got the unbelievable blessings that this country is going to afford me despite the difficult times. And so she went about putting her 2 sons in a tiny apartment over top of that grocery store and going about lifting herself up in the middle class of this country. And that is what America is about. It is about economic freedom. It is about entrepreneurialism. It's not about what Steve was just saying. It's not about the government being there to shower largesse upon people forever and ever with no limits. That's not what we're about. One thing we don't ever want to limit is entrepreneurialism in this country, is the dream of everyone looking to climb that ladder of success. And that's really the essence of the aspirational American in history. And this is where I believe this election will play out. This is so much about what the discussion on the House floor is every single day in committees and subcommittees. It is how do we set a system or a structure of laws that allows for the greatest potential for individuals? How does government assume its proper role in a responsible life when those who cannot help themselves, how does government allow for them to develop the tools so that they too can ascend the ladder of success? It is through an attitude of competitiveness and creating that environment that we can take a risk. Just like my grandparents, just like so many of yours, they took a risk to come here. That is the essence of entrepreneurialism too. And, you know, it reminds me of a story. I was in Atlanta about 6 weeks ago, and I was speaking with a small business person who told me of his successes, that he had started a business in 2005, so 7 years ago. And then today has built that business into a $250 million concern. But he said to me, he said, Eric, if I had to make that decision to start a business today, I wouldn't. Now, all of us politicians, we're all in the business of hyperbole. So I said, come on. That's for me, that's not for you. Tell me why, really, you would make that decision today. And he said, well, first of all, back then, I knew if I made $1, I'd keep 64 or 65 cents of that dollar. He said, I have no idea what the tax rate is going to be on my profits at the end of this year. He said, I've got to hire people. I usually provide a benefit or a benefit of health care. So I have no idea what's going on with this health care law. Obviously now we got the Supreme Court in the mix, unsure about where that goes, and what my cost is going to be. He's also an individual with heavy labor sort of requirements in the business. He says, look at what Washington's doing to me there. With all the increased requirement, all the kind of mandates that are coming from Washington, he said, I have no idea what my relationships with my employees are going to be long term because of Washington meddling in my affairs between my management and employees. So, you see, to me, what he's saying is, you can't deal with this kind of uncertainty because all of a sudden, the price of risk increases because of Washington's actions. And anytime you want less of something, just increase the price of risk. Just lower the ultimate return, you'll get less of it. And that is exactly the opposite of what we ought to be doing here. Which is why you are seeing in the House, we are very focused on making sure that we address this alarming trend in the country of the declining number of business startups. Again, going back to who we are, we should be a country, a nation of startups. But for the last 3 years, fewer and fewer people have taken the step to start a business, to be an entrepreneur. In fact, over the last 3 years, there's been a 23% decline in the number of business startups. And if you think about it, while large companies are having to adjust and right-size, and we're seeing these layoffs continue, and levels of official unemployment at alarmingly high rates, not to mention those who've just given up and are out of the workforce, the real antidote to that is to create an environment where people can go from being a laid-off employee and become an employer. So this is part of why we put forward things like the Jobs Act. Tim was a big part of that, and others on the financial and some of the Financial Services Committee, to provide incentive for entrepreneurs, young men, women who want to go into business, to access financing, to do it in a way that is consistent with today's new media world, to allow for those who want to go public to escape from some of the unnecessary burdens of small business, Sarbanes-Oxley, those kind of things, to have an on-ramp, if you will, for folks to start to grow. And that is the essence of what we're trying to do in the House, is to create that environment for entrepreneurialism. In the same way, Steve was very active in terms of advocating, and has been so, as far as a flatter, simpler tax code. It is to promote the more efficient allocation of capital, to get Washington out of the business of telling entrepreneurs how to invest their money, how to manage their risk, and leave it up to the investors. That's why you see in the articles today, there's going to be an ongoing debate, and brewing debate over small businesses and tax concerns for small businesses. If we can't yet get straight and agree upon the kind of tax reform we want, let's at least afford small businessmen and women the ability to keep more of their money, which is why we said, at least now, let's do a 20% small business tax cut. Let's allow for the folks in my district and all the others around the country to have it a little easier, to keep a little bit more of the money they earn, and put that money to the use they know is best for their business, not the use that Washington sees fit. And so again, we're going to continue to have these discussions. I can't think of a better way to highlight the overall goal and direction, which is entrepreneurialism in America, which is the fact that we want to be that startup country. We want to be the place, the destination for the world's best and brightest, for those willing to come, to work hard, to take a risk, and to make something of themselves. And our role as policymakers at the federal level is to create an environment for that to happen for everybody, to afford equal outcome, to afford equal opportunity, not equal outcome, to make sure that everybody's got a fair shot at earning their success. And that's what we ought to be about. That's the essence of entrepreneurialism in America. So again, thank you very, very much for being here, Tim. Thank you.